Okay, so I'm going to start with anaerobic respiration. And with anaerobic respiration, there is no oxygen and there is no mitochondria present. So, with that being said, the process of glycolysis we know cannot take place in the mitochondria, so it takes place in the cytoplasm in anaerobic and aerobic respiration. So during glycolysis, glucose, which comes from the food that we eat, is broken down into pyruvate. Now, in anaerobic respiration, that pyruvate, when it breaks down, during that process, we create 2 ATP. That ATP is stored, or it goes over and is picked up by NAD+. When it picks those electrons up, that NAD+ becomes full, making NADH. From there, it becomes stuck. There's nowhere for those electrons to go. So when we make pyruvate in anaerobic respiration, it's broken down even further into lactate or lactic acid. When that happens, then our NADH can release one of those electrons to the lactate, and that frees up our NADH and becomes NAD+, which goes back to the beginning and is able to pick up more of those ATP electrons. And that is how the anaerobic respiration phase continues through a process of lactic acid fermentation. And as long as we are breathing, that process will continue to go and produce lactic acid. That happens like when we're extensively exercising, running, anything kind of exerting ourselves. But that lactic acid builds up during the anaerobic respiration, and that's where muscle pain comes from when we're overexerting ourselves in exercise. And anaerobic respiration is kind of a boost for aerobic respiration. So then aerobic respiration is when oxygen in mitochondria is both present. So again, just like in anaerobic respiration, we have glycolysis, which takes place in the cytoplasm. And glycolysis, again, is the process in which glucose is broken down into pyruvate. Now, in aerobic respiration, because the mitochondria and oxygen are both present, those pyruvate enter into the mitochondria, losing the carbon atom, which generates CO2, and joins a coenzyme to create acetyl-CoA. And during that process, 2 ATP are produced. 2 more ATP are produced. So then we have, so after it enters into the mitochondria, the pyruvate loses the carbon atom, which generates CO2, and then that atom joins a coenzyme to form acetyl-CoA. That acetyl-CoA can then enter into the Krebs cycle, or the citric acid cycle. And that's when those pyruvate both make a round around the Krebs cycle. And again, we are releasing CO2 as a waste product. It's being generated, and again, from coming down into the mitochondria, and then again in the Krebs cycle, and we're releasing that CO2 as a waste product. And during the Krebs cycle, another 2 ATP is produced. So during both processes of the pyruvate coming into the mitochondria and the Krebs cycle, these high energy electrons, hydrogen ions, known as NADH and FADH, are being released. And they are traveling through the electron transport chain. And when they get around the electron transport chain, those hydrogen ions recombine with oxygen ions that we breathe, and another waste product of water is being released. And during that process of those high energy hydrogen ions, NADH and FADH traveling through the electron transport chain and combining with the oxygen that we breathe, as an additional 32 approximately ATP are produced. So in aerobic respiration, we have about 36 ATP produced in the whole cycle. Now, the reason we breathe is the oxygen that we breathe in. If we didn't do that, processes like cellular respiration would not be possible. The oxygen that we breathe enables cells to break down the food that we eat in order to produce the energy that we need. And that's a wrap.